Poor girl leaves a letter for Santa Claus requesting food for her family. The next day, she receives another letter and cries when she reads it. The streets of Cedar Hill were quiet that December evening, blanketed in a thin layer of snow that sparkled under the pale moonlight. Inside a modest, two-bedroom house on Chestnut Lane, 10-year-old Lily Hamilton was hunched over a worn wooden table. Her small fingers gripped a pencil tightly as she pressed it against a piece of lined paper. Her breath fogged the chilly air of the unheated room as she wrote carefully, "Dear Santa, my name is Lily. I live with my mommy and my little brother, Timmy. Mommy works very hard, but this year has been very hard for us too. Timmy and I don't want toys for Christmas. We would just like some food so Mommy can rest. She is so tired. I promise we have been good. Thank you, Santa. Love, Lily." Lily reread her letter twice, a determined expression on her face. Satisfied, she folded the paper neatly and placed it into an envelope. Her mother, Emily, was in the next room, softly humming an old tune while mending one of Timmy's threadbare sweaters. She hadn't noticed Lily slip the letter into her coat pocket. Lily had heard from her teacher that Santa received letters through the town's postbox at the corner of Maple Street. With her scarf wrapped tightly around her neck, she ventured out, her boots crunching through the snow. The wind bit at her cheeks, but she didn't stop until she dropped the letter into the mailbox with a faint clink. As she walked back, her heart was filled with a fragile hope. The next morning, the family awoke to their usual routine. Emily prepared what little breakfast they had, oatmeal thinned with water. She didn't notice Lily's unusually chipper mood, but Timmy did. "What's got you so smiley, Lily?" he asked, his voice filled with childish curiosity. "It's a secret," she whispered back, winking. Emily raised an eyebrow but said nothing, assuming Lily was just being imaginative. Little did she know, the child's small act of hope had set something in motion that would alter their lives in ways none of them could predict. The reply 2 days later, Lily returned home from school to find an envelope sitting on their porch. Her name was written in neat cursive on the front. She gasped, clutching it tightly, and rushed inside. "Mom! Timmy! Look!" she shouted, waving the envelope. Emily took it cautiously, her face clouded with confusion. "Who would send this?" "It's from Santa," Lily exclaimed, eyes wide with excitement. Emily frowned slightly but opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on beautiful stationery. "Dear Lily, thank you for your letter. Touched my heart. You are a brave and kind little girl to think of your family. I would like to help you and your mommy. There's a little surprise waiting for you at the Maple Street grocery. Merry Christmas. With love, Santa." Emily's hands trembled as she read the letter aloud. Timmy clapped his hands in excitement, but Emily's cautious nature took over. This must be a mistake," she murmured. But Lily was already tugging at her coat. "Mom, let's go. Please." A visit to the grocery at the Maple Street grocery. The cashier greeted them with a knowing smile as they entered. "You must be the Hamilton family," he said. Emily nodded hesitantly. "Yes, but..." The cashier handed her a sealed envelope. "This is for you. Someone paid your account in full and left credit for more." Emily opened the envelope, her breath catching as she saw the prepaid grocery card. A note inside read, "No mistake. It's for you. Merry Christmas. From Santa." Emily's eyes welled with tears. She clutched the card to her chest as Lily and Timmy looked at the aisles filled with food. "We can have a real Christmas dinner, Mom," Lily whispered. For the first time in months, Emily allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still kindness in the world. Emily Hamilton stood in the center of the Maple Street grocery, holding the envelope as if it were made of glass. The hum of customers moving about the store faded into the background. Her heart raced, not from joy but from cautious disbelief. She had spent years managing expectations, balancing the impossible weight of providing for her children with limited means. And now, someone, this anonymous Santa, had shattered that fragile equilibrium. "Mom," Lily tugged at her coat sleeve. "Can we get something for dinner? Please?" Emily blinked, coming back to the present. She looked down at her daughter, whose bright eyes were filled with a rare spark of hope. Timmy stood beside her, bouncing on the balls of his feet. They were hungry, but more than that, they were excited to dream, if only for a moment. "Yes," Emily said, her voice shaky but resolute. "Let's pick out something nice. A meal to remember that night." The Hamiltons sat around their small wooden table. Steam rose from a pot of hearty beef stew, filling the air with a warmth they hadn't felt in months. Fresh bread sat on a plate in the center, its crust golden and crisp. Emily had even splurged on a small carton of chocolate milk for the children. "Do you think Santa eats stew like this?" Timmy asked, his wide eyes fixed on the bowl in front of him. "I bet he does," Lily replied with a giggle, dipping a piece of bread into her bowl. "But probably with cookies for dessert." Emily chuckled softly, though her mind raced with unanswered questions. Who had sent that letter? Why had they chosen her family? She glanced at the note once more, now lying on the countertop. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate. Someone had gone to great lengths to make this happen. Whoever it was, she murmured to herself, "I owe them more than thanks." A knock at the door the next morning. As the winter sun fought to warm the frosted ground, there was a knock at the door. Emily paused mid-sweep, her brow furrowing. She wasn't expecting anyone. Few people visited them anymore, and even fewer bothered to knock. She opened the door cautiously, half expecting a neighbor or a misplaced delivery. Instead, she found a man in a crisp wool coat, a scarf tucked neatly around his neck. He was middle-aged, with graying hair and kind eyes. "Mrs. Hamilton?" he asked, his voice warm but formal. "Yes," Emily replied hesitantly, shielding Timmy, who peeked out from behind her legs. "My name is Walter Grayson. I believe you received a letter recently?" He held up a briefcase, as if to underscore the seriousness of his visit. Emily stiffened, her heart pounding. "Are you the one who sent it?" Walter smiled faintly. "Not quite, but I'm here on behalf of someone who did. May I come in? I promise, this won't take long." Emily hesitated. There was no malice in his demeanor, only sincerity. She nodded slowly and stepped aside. A generous offer once seated at the kitchen table, Walter reached into his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. He placed them carefully in front of Emily, who eyed them with suspicion. "The person who sent the letter prefers to remain anonymous," Walter began, his tone measured. "But they've asked me to assist your family in a more permanent way." Emily's hands trembled as she turned over the top sheet. It was a rental agreement, prepaid for a year, for a small but well-kept house on the other side of town. The second document was a job offer, a part-time position at the Maple Street grocery, with flexible hours to accommodate her parenting responsibilities. "I don't understand," Emily whispered. "Why would anyone do this for us?" Walter leaned forward, his expression softening. "Because they believe in you, Mrs. Hamilton. They see how hard you've worked, how much you've sacrificed for your children. This isn't charity. It's a chance to rebuild." Emily's dilemma as Walter explained the details. Emily felt overwhelmed. The offer was almost too good to be true. A better home, a steady income, stability for her children. But it also came with an unspoken weight. Accepting the kindness of a stranger. Pride and gratitude wrestled within her. "I'll need some time to think about this," she said finally, her voice barely audible. Walter nodded, standing to leave. "Take all the time you need. But remember, someone believes you deserve this chance." As he stepped out into the snow, Lily ran to her mother. "Mom, what's going on? Are we moving?" Emily knelt down and hugged her tightly. "I don't know yet, sweetie. But whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." The decision that night, after the children had gone to bed, Emily sat alone at the table. The rental agreement and job offer stared back at her, daring her to take the leap. She thought of the stranger, this silent benefactor who had chosen her family out of so many others. She thought of the letter, the groceries, and the kindness that had brought them this far. With a deep breath, she picked up the pen and signed her name. The winter air was crisp the morning the Hamiltons moved into their new home. The house was a modest single-story with a small front yard, but to Emily, it felt like a palace compared to the drafty apartment they'd left behind. The walls were freshly painted in warm beige tones, and the kitchen, though simple, gleamed with clean countertops and new appliances. Lily and Timmy darted excitedly from room to room. "Look, Mom, we have our own bedrooms," Lily exclaimed, her voice echoing down the hallway. Emily smiled faintly as she unpacked a box of dishes. She still couldn't believe any of this was real. The stranger's generosity had lifted a burden she hadn't realized was crushing her spirit. For the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. Settling in later that afternoon, Walter Grayson stopped by to check on them. He carried a basket of fresh produce and pantry staples, which he set on the kitchen counter. "How are you finding everything?" he asked, glancing around. Emily nodded, brushing her hands nervously against her apron. "It's perfect. More than I ever imagined. Thank you for helping us." Walter smiled kindly. "Just doing my part. Your benefactor would want you to feel at home." Emily hesitated. "And they still don't want me to know who they are?" Walter shook his head. "They value their privacy. But I assure you, their intentions are genuine." Before he left, Walter handed Emily a folded piece of paper. "Your schedule for the grocery job. You can start whenever you're ready." Emily opened it after he left, her heart swelling with gratitude. The hours were indeed flexible, and the pay was better than she'd expected. A new routine days turned into weeks, and the Hamiltons began to settle into their new life. Emily started her job at the grocery store, where her co-workers welcomed her warmly. The store manager, Mrs. Cole, even offered to let Lily and Timmy stay in the office after school until Emily's shift ended. "You've got good kids," Mrs. Cole said one evening as she handed Timmy a cookie. "Polite, hardworking, just like their mom." Lily, sitting at a desk with her homework spread out, beamed at the compliment. "Mom's the best," she declared. Emily blushed, her heart swelling with pride. It wasn't perfect. She still worried about money, and the mystery of their benefactor lingered in her thoughts. But for the first time in years, she felt hopeful. A package arrives one snowy afternoon. A delivery truck pulled up to their house. The driver handed Emily a large, neatly wrapped box. "Who's it from?" Lily asked, bouncing with excitement. "There's no name," Emily replied, carefully untying the ribbon. Inside, she found a collection of winter essentials. Thick coats, boots, gloves, and scarves for each of them. At the bottom was a card with the same elegant handwriting as the letter they'd received weeks before. "Stay warm this winter. You are not alone. Santa." Emily's hands trembled as she read the note. Tears welled in her eyes, and she pulled her children close. "Someone out there really cares about you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The unexpected visitor that evening, as the family enjoyed a cozy dinner, there was another knock at the door. Emily opened it to find a woman standing there, her face partially hidden by a scarf. She was young, with kind eyes that sparkled in the dim porch light. "Mrs. Hamilton?" the woman asked softly. "Yes, that's me. I think you've been receiving letters from someone who works with my organization. I'm here to tell you more about them. If you're willing to listen." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She stepped aside to let the woman in. The woman stepped into the Hamiltons' cozy living room, shaking the snow off her scarf. She glanced around, her gaze settling briefly on the modest Christmas decorations that Lily and Timmy had proudly arranged. Emily offered her a seat, her nerves tightening with every second. "I should introduce myself," the visitor began, sitting gracefully on the edge of the couch. "My name is Margaret Hayes. I work with a local nonprofit called The Giving Tree." Emily tilted her head, confused. "The Giving Tree? I've never heard of it." Margaret nodded. "That's intentional. Our mission is to provide discreet assistance to families in need, especially those who are working hard but have fallen on hard times. Someone close to you reached out to us on your behalf." Emily's breath hitched. "Someone close to me?" Margaret hesitated, then smiled. "I'm not allowed to reveal who. They requested anonymity, but they shared enough about your story to move us. From the job opportunity to the new home, everything has been arranged through our network." Emily's thoughts swirled. She had so many questions, But before she could voice them, Margaret continued. I know it might feel strange to accept help from a stranger, Margaret said gently, but you've earned this. You've done everything possible for your children. This is simply a helping hand. Not charity, not pity. Lily and Timmy's questions. Timmy peeked out from the hallway, his curiosity getting the better of him. Mom? Who is she? Margaret smiled warmly. Hello there. I'm Margaret. I work with some special people who wanted to make sure your family had a good Christmas. Is she Santa? Timmy whispered loudly to Lily, who giggled. Emily smiled despite herself. No, Timmy. But she's someone who helps Santa. Then thank you for the presents. Lily piped up, her face glowing with excitement. You're very welcome, Margaret replied, her voice soft. You two are very lucky to have such a strong mom. Timmy's eyes lit up. She's the strongest ever. A moment of reflection after the children returned to their room, Emily turned back to Margaret. I don't know how to express my gratitude, she said, but I can't help wondering. Why me? Margaret leaned forward slightly, her expression sincere. Because someone saw your strength and kindness and wanted to ease your burden. They believed you deserved a chance to focus on your dreams rather than just surviving. Emily blinked back tears. She had spent so long suppressing her own hopes that she barely remembered what they were. A final note. Margaret reached into her bag and handed Emily a small envelope. This is from the same person who started all of this. They asked me to deliver it personally. Emily opened it carefully, her hands trembling. Inside was a simple note. Dear Emily, I see how hard you work, how much you sacrifice for your children. You've taught them love, resilience, and hope despite everything. I want you to know that your efforts are seen, and they matter. Please accept this help as a reminder that you're not alone. Wishing you a Merry Christmas and brighter days ahead. Yours, a friend. Emily pressed the note to her chest, her tears falling freely. Please, she whispered to Margaret. If you ever see this person, tell them thank you. Tell them they've given us more than they can imagine. Margaret smiled. I will. And if you ever feel like you're ready to know more, reach out to me. You have my number. As Margaret left, Emily stood by the window, watching the snow fall softly onto their quiet street. She didn't know who her mysterious benefactor was, but for the first time in years, she felt truly seen. Days passed, and life in the Hamilton household began to settle into its new rhythm. Emily's job at the grocery store gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Lily and Timmy flourished, their spirits lifted by the stability of their new home. But despite the joy of these changes, a lingering question continued to haunt Emily. Who was the anonymous benefactor who had turned their lives around? One snowy evening, as the children played in their rooms, Emily sat at the kitchen table with the envelope Margaret had left. She traced the handwriting with her fingers, trying to place it. Something about it felt familiar, but she couldn't quite figure out why. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. When she opened it, she was surprised to find Mrs. Cole, her manager at the grocery store, holding a tray of cookies. I thought I'd bring these by for the kids, Mrs. Cole said, brushing the snow off her coat. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, Emily replied, stepping aside to let her in. Come in, please. An unexpected connection as Mrs. Cole settled into a chair. She glanced around the cozy living room, her eyes lingering on the Christmas tree Lily had decorated with handmade ornaments. You've made this place feel like a real home, she said warmly. Emily nodded, smiling faintly. We're so grateful for everything we've been given. Still feels like a dream. Mrs. Cole hesitated for a moment, then leaned forward slightly. Emily, I hope you don't mind me asking, but do you have any idea who's behind all this? Emily shook her head. Not exactly. Margaret Hayes from the Giving Tree said it was someone who wanted to remain anonymous. But I can't help feeling like it's someone I know. Mrs. Cole pursed her lips thoughtfully. It's remarkable, really. I've seen how hard you work, how much you care about your family. Whoever it is must know you well. They've given you exactly what you needed. Emily looked down at her hands, her thoughts swirling. It's just, I wish I could thank them properly. A whisper of a clue as Mrs. Cole rose to leave. She turned back to Emily, her expression thoughtful. "You know," she said, "there was a man who came into the store a few weeks ago, asking questions about you. He seemed kind, very interested in helping. I assumed he was a friend of yours." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "What did he look like?" Mrs. Cole frowned slightly, trying to recall. Middle-aged, maybe late 40s. Tall, with dark hair just starting to gray. Polite but quiet. "He asked if you were still working hard despite everything. And I told him you were one of the best employees I'd ever had." Emily's mind raced. "Did he say his name?" "No, I'm afraid not. But he left not long after that. I haven't seen him since." A new suspect that night. As Emily lay in bed, she replayed Mrs. Cole's description in her mind. The man she described sounded familiar, but Emily couldn't quite place him. Was he an old friend? A distant relative? Or perhaps someone she had helped in the past? Her thoughts drifted to her late husband's family. Though they hadn't been in touch for years, there had been one cousin, Robert, who had always shown a quiet kindness. Could he be the one behind all of this? The letter the next morning, a new envelope arrived in their mailbox. This time, it was addressed to both Emily and her children. Inside was another note, written in the same elegant handwriting. To the Hamilton family, the holiday season is a time for gratitude and giving, and you've given so much of yourselves to each other. Consider this a small token of appreciation for the love and resilience you embody. Your friend, always. Beneath the note was a gift card to a local bookstore, along with a small, handwritten edition. "Lily and Timmy, pick something magical." The bookstore gift card became the highlight of Lily and Timmy's week. Emily bundled them up in their winter coats and scarves, and they marched into Pine Grove Books on a bright Saturday morning. The air inside was warm and smelled of paper and pine. Someone had set up a Christmas tree in the corner, its lights twinkling softly. Lily darted straight for the children's section, her face lighting up at the colorful covers. Timmy trailed behind, carefully inspecting each shelf. Emily watched them from a distance, her heart full at their happiness. But the mystery of the benefactor lingered at the back of her mind. While the children browsed, Emily wandered toward the front counter. An older gentleman with round glasses and a cheerful smile greeted her. "Good morning. Can I help you find anything?" he asked. "Actually," Emily said hesitantly, "I wanted to ask if you've seen this handwriting before." She pulled out the latest note from her pocket and placed it on the counter. The man adjusted his glasses, leaning in for a closer look. It does look familiar," he murmured. "Elegant, deliberate. I've seen handwriting like this on orders from a man named Robert. He's a regular here." Emily's pulse quickened. "Robert? Do you know his last name?" The man shook his head. "I'm afraid not. But he always buys children's books and pays for them to be delivered anonymously." Very kind fellow. Emily's suspicions grew. Could this Robert be her late husband's cousin? The same man who had been kind to her family in the past? A family connection that evening. Emily sat down with a cup of tea, her mind racing. She hadn't spoken to Robert in years, not since her husband's funeral. He'd been supportive then, offering quiet words of comfort and promising to stay in touch. But life had pulled them in different directions, and they'd lost contact. After putting the children to bed, she pulled out an old address book from a dusty drawer. Her finger ran down the faded names until she found it. Robert Hamilton. The address was out of town, but not far. Gathering her courage, she decided to write a letter. The letter to Robert. "Dear Robert, I hope this letter finds you well. I've thought of you often over the years, remembering your kindness during one of the hardest times of my life. Recently, someone has done something extraordinary for me and my children. They've given us a fresh start, and their generosity reminds me of the person I knew you to be. If this is your doing, please let me thank you properly. If not, I hope you'll forgive my presumption. I simply wanted to reach out. With gratitude, Emily Hamilton, ***. She sealed the envelope and placed it on the counter, ready to mail the next morning. An unexpected response. The week crawled by with no reply. Emily told herself not to expect too much. Perhaps Robert had moved, or perhaps he wasn't the benefactor after all. But on Thursday evening, a knock at the door startled her. When she opened it, A tall man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes stood on the porch, clutching the letter she'd sent. He smiled sheepishly. "Emily," he said softly, "it's been a long time." "Robert," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, come in." The truth unfolds seated in the living room. Robert looked around, his gaze lingering on the children's books stacked on the coffee table and the family photos on the wall. "You wrote to me," he began, "and you're right. I've been keeping an eye on you and the kids, from a distance. I wanted to help, but I didn't know how to approach you." Emily's heart raced. "So it was you? The letters, the house, the job? It was all you?" Robert nodded. "I couldn't sit back and do nothing, knowing you were struggling, but I also didn't want to intrude. You've always been so strong, Emily. I just wanted to make things a little easier." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Robert, I don't know how to thank you. You've given us more than I could ever imagine." He shook his head, his voice gentle. "You don't need to thank me. Just promise me one thing. Take care of yourself. And if you ever need help, don't hesitate to ask." A renewed bond. The children wandered into the room, rubbing their sleepy eyes. Robert knelt down to greet them, his warm smile putting them at ease. Timmy handed him a book. "Will you read to us?" he asked shyly. Robert glanced at Emily for permission. She nodded, her heart full. As he began reading, his deep, steady voice filled the room, and Emily realized that for the first time in years, she felt truly at peace. Robert quickly became a familiar presence in the Hamilton household. He visited often, bringing books for Lily, puzzles for Timmy, and a quiet sense of reassurance for Emily. At first, Emily hesitated to let him in completely. Old habits of self-reliance and pride made her cautious. But his gentle persistence and genuine care gradually broke down her walls. It wasn't long before Robert started joining them for dinners, filling the once silent house with stories of his travels and quiet laughter that had been missing for years. The children adored him. Timmy often asked him to help with homework, and Lily hung on every word of his tales about far-off places. "Uncle Robert, do you know Santa?" Timmy asked one evening, his wide eyes filled with wonder. Robert chuckled, glancing at Emily. "Well, let's just say I've learned a thing or two about giving," he said with a wink. Emily's growing gratitude as winter deepened. So did Emily's appreciation for Robert's role in their lives. On a snowy evening after the children had gone to bed, she and Robert sat by the fireplace, sipping hot cocoa. The room was quiet, save for the crackling of the flames. "I need to say this," Emily began, her voice soft but firm. "Thank you, Robert, for everything. You've done more for us than I ever thought possible." Robert set down his mug, his expression thoughtful. "Emily, I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because you deserve it. You've carried so much on your shoulders for so long. It was time someone carried some of it for you." Emily blinked back tears, her emotions threatening to spill over. "You've changed our lives. I don't know how we can ever repay you." He smiled gently. "You already have, by letting me be part of your family." Whispers in the community as Robert's visits became more frequent. The small-town gossip mill began to churn. Emily overheard whispers at the grocery store about the wealthy man spending time with the Hamiltons. Some speculated that he was a long-lost relative. Others suggested he had romantic intentions. Mrs. Cole, always kind but blunt, brought it up one afternoon as they stocked shelves together. "So, Emily, what's the story with Robert? People are starting to wonder." Emily flushed, focusing on the cans in her hands. "He's family, sort of. My late husband's cousin. He's just helping us out." Mrs. Cole gave her a knowing look. "Well, whatever he is, he seems like a good man. Don't let the gossip bother you." Emily nodded, but the truth was the gossip did bother her. She had worked hard to rebuild her life and maintain her independence. The last thing she wanted was for people to think she was relying on Robert for everything. Robert's offer one evening, after helping Timmy with his math homework, Robert pulled Emily aside. "I've been thinking," he said. "I'd like to set up a fund for the kids. Something to help with their education or any unexpected expenses. No strings attached." Emily's breath caught. "Robert, you've already done so much. I can't accept. He held up a hand, stopping her. It's not about you accepting anything, Emily. It's about giving them a future. I don't want to overstep, but I want to help in any way I can. Emily hesitated, torn between gratitude and pride. Let me think about it, she said finally. A moment of doubt that night. As Emily lay in bed, doubts crept into her mind. Robert's kindness felt almost too good to be true. What if she became too dependent on him? What if he decided to leave, taking the stability he'd brought with him? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at her bedroom door. It was Lily, clutching a small stuffed rabbit. "Mom," she whispered. "Are you okay?" Emily smiled and patted the bed beside her. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just thinking." "About Uncle Robert?" Lily asked, her innocent eyes wide. Emily nodded, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "Yes, he's done so much for us. I just want to make sure we don't ask too much of him." Lily tilted her head thoughtfully. "But he's happy when he's with us. I think he likes being part of our family." Emily's heart ached at her daughter's wisdom. "You're right," she whispered, pulling Lily into a hug. A Christmas invitation. As Christmas approached, Robert extended an invitation for the Hamiltons to join him at his home for Christmas Eve dinner. Emily hesitated. Accepting felt like a step toward something bigger than she was ready for. But the children's excitement was contagious, and she eventually agreed. On Christmas Eve, as they walked up the path to Robert's warm, beautifully decorated home, Emily felt a mix of gratitude and apprehension. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, she felt ready to face it, with Robert by her side. The warmth of Robert's home embraced them the moment they stepped through the door. The scent of pine and cinnamon filled the air, and a roaring fire crackled in the stone hearth. A towering Christmas tree, adorned with sparkling lights and ornaments, stood proudly in the corner, its base surrounded by neatly wrapped gifts. Lily and Timmy gawked at the festive decorations, their faces alight with wonder. "Uncle Robert, your house is amazing," Lily exclaimed, spinning in the center of the room. Robert chuckled. "I had a little help from some friends." "I'm glad you like it," Emily hung back, feeling out of place amidst the grandeur. But when Robert met her gaze and smiled, she felt a flicker of reassurance. The dinner table, the dining room, was set with care. A long wooden table draped in a red and gold tablecloth, adorned with candles and a centerpiece of holly and berries. Robert had gone all out, with a feast that included roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, and freshly baked rolls. "This is incredible," Emily said softly as they sat down. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble." Robert shook his head. "It's no trouble at all. I've wanted to share a Christmas like this for a long time." As they ate, the conversation flowed easily. Timmy regaled them with tales of his favorite books, and Lily shared her dreams of becoming a writer. Emily found herself laughing more than she had in years. A private conversation after dinner, while the children played with their new gifts. A set of art supplies for Lily and a building block kit for Timmy. Robert led Emily to the sitting room. He handed her a mug of hot cocoa and gestured for her to sit by the fire. "Emily," he began, his tone more serious than usual, "there's something I need to say." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She set down her mug and looked at him, waiting. "I've watched you rebuild your life these past few months," he said. "You're an incredible mother, and you've created something beautiful out of so little. But I don't want to just help from the sidelines anymore. I want to be here, fully, for you and the kids." Emily blinked, unsure of how to respond. "Robert, I don't know what to say." He leaned forward, his eyes steady. "You don't have to say anything now. I just want you to know that I care about you, about all of you, and I'm not going anywhere." Emily's inner conflict that night, as she tucked Lily and Timmy into bed in the guest rooms Robert had prepared for them. Emily's mind was a storm of emotions. She felt deeply for Robert, his kindness, his patience, his unwavering support. But she also feared losing the independence she had fought so hard to regain. Sitting by the window, watching snow fall gently outside, she thought of her late husband. She wondered what he would think of Robert, and of the way he had stepped in to care for their family. "Am I ready for this?" she whispered into the stillness. A Christmas morning surprised the next morning. The Hamiltons woke to a blanket of fresh snow. As Lily and Timmy rushed to open their stockings, Emily found Robert in the kitchen, brewing coffee. "Merry Christmas," he said, handing her a steaming mug. "Merry Christmas," she replied, her voice soft. Before she could say more, Lily burst into the room, holding an envelope. "Mom, look, another letter." Emily took it, her hands trembling as she recognized the familiar handwriting. She opened it carefully and read aloud, "Dear Emily, this Christmas, I hope you feel the love and joy you've given to others reflected back to you. You and your children are a light in this world, and I am grateful to know you. May this day be the start of a future filled with happiness. With love, your friend, *****. As Emily read the words, her eyes filled with tears. She glanced at Robert, who looked back at her with quiet understanding. "Is it you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Robert smiled but said nothing, leaving the question unanswered. The Hamiltons stayed with Robert for the remainder of Christmas Day, the house filled with warmth, laughter, and the kind of joy Emily hadn't felt in years. But as night fell and she watched her children drift into a peaceful sleep, her thoughts returned to the letter. The handwriting, the sentiment, it all pointed to Robert. But why wouldn't he admit it? Emily resolved to ask him directly. A midnight talk after the children were tucked into bed, Emily found Robert in the living room, tidying up the remnants of the day's festivities. He looked up as she entered, a small smile playing on his lips. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Not yet," Emily replied, her voice steady. She sat on the arm of the sofa, clutching the letter in her hands. "I need to know, Robert. Are you the one who's been helping us all this time?" Robert sighed, setting down the plates he had been stacking. He leaned against the table, his expression thoughtful. "Does it matter if it's me?" "It does," Emily insisted. "Because if it's you, I want to thank you properly. I want to understand why you did it." Robert met her gaze, his eyes soft but unwavering. "Emily, you've been through so much, and you've never once asked for help. Watching you struggle, knowing I had the means to make things easier, I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. So it is you," she said, her voice trembling. He nodded. "I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything. This was never about that. It was about giving you and the kids the life you deserve." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but this time, they were tears of relief and gratitude. "Robert, I don't know how to thank you. You've done more for us than I could ever repay." "You don't need to repay me," he said gently. "Just promise me one thing. Don't shut me out." A quiet shift, the conversation shifted something in Emily. For years, she had carried her burdens alone, unwilling to lean on anyone for fear of appearing weak. But Robert's kindness had shown her that accepting help didn't diminish her strength. It amplified it. The days that followed were filled with quiet moments of connection. Robert continued to visit, often bringing small gifts or simply spending time with Lily and Timmy. Emily began to see him not as a benefactor, but as a part of their family. A letter of her own one evening, after putting the children to bed, Emily sat at the kitchen table, a blank piece of paper in front of her. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream. She wrote about her hopes for Lily and Timmy, her gratitude for Robert, and her determination to build a future that honored the love they had been shown. "Dear Robert, thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Thank you for showing my children what kindness and generosity look like. And thank you for staying, for being here when we needed you most. I can't promise that I'll always know how to accept help, but I can promise that I'll try, because you've taught me that it's okay to lean on the people who love us. With gratitude, Emily ****. She folded the letter and tucked it into an envelope, deciding to give it to Robert the next time he visited. The turning point on New Year's Eve, Robert invited the Hamiltons to celebrate with him. They gathered around a bonfire in his backyard, sipping hot cocoa and watching the stars. As the clock struck midnight, Robert turned to Emily, his expression earnest. "This year is a new start," he said. "Not just for you, but for all of us. I want to be here, Emily, not just as someone who helps, but as someone you can count on." Emily hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "We'd like that too." As the new year unfolded, the Hamiltons' bond with Robert grew stronger. He became a constant presence in their lives, not just as a benefactor but as part of their family. He was there to help Lily with her school projects, to cheer Timmy on at his first soccer game, and to share quiet moments with Emily over coffee. For the first time in years, Emily began to envision a future filled with joy and stability. A proposal, not of tradition. One crisp February evening, Robert invited Emily out for a walk. The snow crunched beneath their boots as they strolled along the edge of the frozen lake near his house. The air was cold but clear, and the stars glittered overhead. "Emily," Robert began, stopping to face her. "There's something I've wanted to say for a while now." Emily's heart raced. She clutched her coat tighter, unsure of where this was going. "I know you've been through so much," he continued, "and I never want you to feel like you owe me anything. But being with you and the kids these past months has been the happiest time of my life. I care about you, and I want to be here for the long haul. Not as a benefactor, but as family." Emily's breath caught. "Robert." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, wrapped box. "I'm not asking for anything traditional. Not yet. But I want you to have this." Emily opened the box to find a delicate gold necklace with a charm in the shape of a tree, a symbol of strength and growth. She blinked back tears. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you." Robert smiled. "It's a reminder that no matter what happens, we'll grow together. As a family, a true partnership." Over the months that followed, Emily and Robert slowly but surely built a life together. Robert continued to support the Hamiltons, but now as an equal partner, sharing the responsibilities and joys of their lives. Lily and Timmy began calling him Uncle Robert without hesitation, and their bond with him grew deeper each day. He attended parent-teacher conferences, helped with bedtime stories, and even learned how to make Lily's favorite pancakes. The family tree. One sunny spring afternoon, Robert surprised the children by planting a tree in their backyard. "This is our family tree," he explained, handing Timmy a small watering can. "We'll take care of it together, just like we take care of each other." Timmy and Lily were thrilled, eagerly helping to pack the soil around the sapling's base. Emily watched from the porch, her heart full as she realized how far they had come. A letter left behind that night. As Emily cleaned the kitchen, she noticed an envelope sitting on the counter. It was addressed to her, written in the familiar handwriting that had first set this journey into motion. She opened it carefully, her hands trembling. "Dear Emily, you are the strongest person I know. You've faced so much with courage and grace, and you've taught your children what it means to love without limits. Watching you has been a privilege, and I am so proud of the family we've become. This is just the beginning. Together, we will build a life filled with laughter, love, and endless possibilities. Yours always, Robert. ****. Emily pressed the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her cheeks. She knew now, without a doubt, that she and her children had found the family they had always dreamed of. Epilogue. A life rebuilt years later, the Hamiltons' family tree stood tall and strong, its branches reaching toward the sky. Beneath its shade, Emily, Robert, Lily, and Timmy often gathered, sharing stories, dreams, and laughter. Emily's journey had been filled with hardship, but it had also led her to something extraordinary. A life filled with love, hope, and the promise of a brighter future. The end. A teenage girl arrives at the emergency room with a newborn in her arms. When the doctor asks where the baby came from, her answer brings everyone to tears. The automatic doors of Boston General's emergency room wheezed open against the howling December wind. Sarah Mitchell stumbled through, her legs trembling from the 3-mile journey that had felt like an eternity. Each step through the deepening snow had been a silent prayer, a desperate mantra of "Please let him live. Please let him live." While memories of her mother's last words echoed in her mind. "Promise me, baby. Promise you'll keep him safe." Her dark hair was crusted with ice, her fingers nearly frozen around the bundle in her arms. The fluorescent lights caught the tears that had frozen on her cheeks during her desperate journey through the storm. In those 3 hours since her mother's death, Sarah had aged years. her 15-year-old shoulders carrying a weight no child should bear. "Please," she gasped, her voice cracking. The word tasted like the copper penny flavor of fear that had been in her mouth since she'd first seen the blood pooling around her mother. "Please help him." The bundle stirred against her chest, and a tiny whimper emerged from within the folds of her winter coat. The same coat her mother had insisted on buying her last Christmas, even though Sarah knew they couldn't afford it. "You need to stay warm, sweetheart. I won't have my girl catching pneumonia." Now that coat was serving as an improvised blanket for her newborn brother, while Sarah's thin sweater offered little protection against the bitter cold. Linda Martinez, the night shift nurse, was already moving before Sarah could say another word. There was something in the girl's eyes, a haunted desperation that spoke of tragedy, that triggered every maternal instinct Linda possessed. "Dr. Chun, need you here, stat?" Dr. James Chun had been fighting the bone-deep exhaustion of hour 14 in his 18-hour shift, his mind drifting to memories of his wife Rebecca at home and their own struggles with infertility. The urgency in Linda's voice cut through his fatigue like a shot of adrenaline. He turned to see Linda guiding a teenage girl toward the nearest exam room, one arm around her trembling shoulders. He quickly cataloged what he saw. Adolescent, probably 14 or 15, showing signs of extreme cold exposure. Her jeans were soaked and starting to freeze from the knee down. Her sweater stained with what his experienced eye recognized as amniotic fluid and blood. But it was her eyes that caught him, wide, haunted, and somehow ancient in her young face. They were her mother's eyes, though he wouldn't know that until later. "I'm Dr. Chun," he said, keeping his voice steady as he fell into step beside them. In 15 years of emergency medicine, he'd learned that his calm could be contagious, even in the most desperate situations. "Can you tell me what's happening?" "He's cold," she whispered, clutching the bundle closer. "I tried so hard to keep him warm. I had to stop every few blocks to check his breathing, to make sure he was still." Her voice broke off in a sob that seemed to come from somewhere deep and broken inside her. The journey through the snowstorm replayed in her mind. The way she'd huddled in doorways to shelter her brother from the wind, how she'd sung lullabies through chattering teeth to keep them both going. The terror each time she had to unwrap him slightly to make sure his chest was still rising and falling. Every step had been a battle between the need to hurry and the fear of slipping on the ice while carrying such precious cargo. They reached the exam room, and Linda gently helped Sarah lay the bundle on the warmed blanket she'd already prepared on the examination table. As the coat fell open, Dr. Chen's breath caught. The newborn couldn't have been more than a few hours old. The umbilical cord had been tied off with what looked like a shoelace, the knot inexpert but functional, the kind of solution born of desperate necessity and quick thinking. Dr. Chun began his assessment, his movements sufficient but gentle. Temperature, definitely hypothermic, but not critically so. Heart rate, rapid but strong. Respiratory effort, labored but adequate. The baby's lips had a slightly bluish tinge, but his color was already improving in the warmth of the exam room. "Where's the mother?" he asked, already reaching for the warming lights and additional blankets. As soon as the words left his mouth, he saw something shatter in the girl's expression, and his heart clenched in anticipation of her answer. Sarah's next words fell into the room like stones into still water, creating ripples that would change all their lives. "He's my brother," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mom died giving birth to him 3 hours ago in our bathroom. I just couldn't let him die too." The last words caught in her throat, tangled with the grief she hadn't allowed herself to feel yet, not while her brother's life hung in the balance. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the steady beep of monitors being attached to the newborn. Dr. Chun saw Linda bring a hand to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. Even after all his years in the ER, some cases still had the power to crack open his heart. He thought of his own wife at home, of their empty nursery and years of disappointment, and felt something shift inside him. "What's your name?" he asked softly, as he continued examining the baby, noting with growing admiration that despite the traumatic circumstances, someone, clearly this extraordinary young girl, had managed to clear the baby's airways and keep him breathing. The umbilical tie, though improvised, had been placed correctly. Sarah Mitchell. And this "This is my brother." Mom didn't get to name him. Her voice caught on the word "Mom," and for a moment, she was back in their small bathroom, holding her mother's hand as it grew cold, watching the life fade from eyes so similar to her own. Dr. Chun nodded, making sure to meet her gaze. "Sarah, you did an amazing job keeping your brother alive. Can you tell me exactly what happened?" Sarah sank into the chair Linda pulled up for her legs finally giving out. The adrenaline that had carried her through the snow was fading, leaving behind an exhaustion so profound it seemed to settle in her bones. She could feel the ghost of her mother's last kiss on her forehead, the weight of that final promise hanging between her and the tiny boy under the warming lights. "Mom found out she was pregnant 8 months ago," she began, her voice distant as if the words were coming from somewhere far away. "She lost her insurance when the company downsized, and she was already working 2 jobs just to keep us fed. After Dad left 2 years ago," she swallowed hard, remembering the morning they'd woken to find him gone, leaving nothing but a note and a stack of unpaid bills. "Mom said she could handle it. Said women had been giving birth at home for thousands of years." Sarah's hands twisted in her lap, remembering how they trembled as she tied off the umbilical cord. "Everything seemed okay at first. I read everything I could find online about home births. Mom made me promise not to tell anyone. She was afraid they'd take me away if social services found out. I got a job at Rosie's Diner after school, saved whatever I could for baby supplies. We really thought it would be okay." Dr. Chun continued his examination of the newborn as she spoke, but his attention was split between the baby's vital signs and Sarah's story. The boy was starting to pink up nicely under the warming lights, his temperature slowly rising toward normal. In his mind, he was already composing the calls he'd need to make. Social services, the medical examiner, perhaps even his wife Rebecca, who had always said their home had too many empty rooms. "But something went wrong," Sarah continued, her voice dropping even lower. "There was so much blood. Mom kept saying it was normal, but I could see she was scared. After he came out, she held him once, just once." Sarah's voice broke, and the tears she'd held back during her long walk through the snow finally began to fall. "She told me she loved us both, made me promise to protect him, and then she was gone. I tried CPR like they showed us in health class, but she wouldn't come back." Linda had moved to stand behind Sarah's chair, her hands resting supportively on the girl's shoulders. Dr. Chun noticed the nurse's tears falling silently into Sarah's snow-damp hair. In that moment, the usual professional distance of the ER seemed to dissolve, replaced by something more fundamental, the shared human experience of loss and love and sacrifice. "The baby wasn't breathing right at first," Sarah continued, the words tumbling out now as if she needed to share the weight of them before they crushed her. "I remembered this video I watched about newborn resuscitation. I cleared his mouth and nose with a bulb syringe we'd bought, gave him rescue breaths until he started crying, used a clean shoelace for the cord like the website said. I tried calling 911, but our power was out from the storm, and my phone was dead." She looked up at Dr. Chen, her eyes suddenly fierce despite the tears. I knew Mom was gone, but he was alive and I had to choose. Mom always said that being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what needs to be done even when you're terrified. So I wrapped him in my coat, locked our apartment, and started walking. The pride and anguish in her voice made Dr. Chen's throat tight. He thought about his own sister, about the bonds of family that could drive someone to walk through a snowstorm with a newborn, carrying not just an infant but the weight of an impossible choice. "You did protect him, Sarah," he said softly. "You did everything right. Your brother is going to be fine thanks to you." As if in confirmation, the baby let out a strong cry, his color now a healthy pink. Sarah reached out a trembling hand to touch his tiny fingers, and the newborn instinctively grasped her index finger. In that simple reflex, Sarah felt the first warmth she'd experienced since her mother's last breath. "I need to call the authorities," Dr. Chun said gently, "and we'll need to send someone to your apartment. But I promise you we're going to help you both through this. You're not alone anymore." Sarah nodded, not taking her eyes off her brother. Can I stay with him?" Of course, Linda answered before Dr. Chun could. I'll bring you some dry clothes and something hot to drink. You're both safe now. As Dr. Chun stepped out of the room to make the necessary calls, he paused in the doorway, watching Sarah lean close to the warming bed, still letting her brother grip her finger. She was whispering something to him, too soft to hear, but Dr. Chun could read her lips. I kept my promise, Mom. I kept my promise. He had to take a moment to compose himself before reaching for his phone. The weight of what he'd witnessed settled around his shoulders like a heavy cloak. In all his years of emergency medicine, he'd seen countless examples of human tragedy and triumph. But there was something about this. It was about a 15-year-old girl walking 3 miles through a snowstorm to save her newborn brother, carrying not just an infant but the weight of an impossible choice that would stay with him forever. As he dialed the number for social services, his free hand unconsciously touched the photo he kept in his wallet. A picture of him and Rebecca on their wedding day, both smiling with hopes of the family they'd build together. Maybe, he thought, this night wasn't just about Sarah keeping her promise to her mother. Maybe it was about all of them finding what they needed in the midst of tragedy. Sarah and her brother finding safety, Linda finding purpose in her care, and him, perhaps finding the family he and Rebecca had been waiting for all along. The story of Sarah Mitchell and her unnamed brother was just beginning, but Dr. Chun knew that in those first crucial hours, she had demonstrated more courage and love than many people show in a lifetime. As he waited for the call to connect, he made a silent promise of his own. These children would not face their future alone. 8 months earlier, Sarah Mitchell sat cross-legged on her mother's bed, watching Claire stare at the pregnancy test with trembling hands. The spring sunlight filtering through their apartment's thin curtains caught the silver strands in her mother's dark hair. When had those appeared? Sarah wondered if they'd multiplied in the 2 years since Dad left, like rings in a tree marking seasons of hardship. Mom, Sarah's voice seemed too loud in the small bedroom. Are you okay? Claire Mitchell looked up at her daughter, and for a moment, Sarah saw something she'd never witnessed in her mother's eyes before. Pure, unbridled fear. But then, like so many times before, Claire squared her shoulders and forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Of course, sweetheart. It's just unexpected. Claire sat down heavily on the bed beside Sarah, the cheap mattress sagging beneath their combined weight. I didn't think this was even possible anymore. I'm 42, for heaven's sake. Sarah reached for her mother's hand, noting how cold her fingers felt. What are we going to do? The word "we" hung in the air between them. Since David Mitchell had walked out 2 years ago, leaving nothing but a note and a mountain of debt, we had been their shield against the world. We'll figure it out. We'll make it work. We have each other. Claire's free hand drifted to her still flat stomach. I can't keep it, she whispered, then immediately shook her head. No, I can't get rid of it. I just can't. Tears welled in her eyes. But Sarah, baby, I don't know how we're going to manage. The insurance. After the downsizing at work, Sarah squeezed her mother's hand. We'll figure it out. We always do, but figuring it out proved harder than either of them could have imagined. The following week, Claire sat at their small kitchen table, calculator in hand, bills spread out before her like a complicated puzzle she couldn't solve. Sarah watched from the doorway as her mother's shoulders slumped further with each calculation. The maintenance job at the school pays weekly, Claire muttered, more to herself than to Sarah. If I pick up extra shifts at the diner on weekends. She looked up, startled to find Sarah watching her. Oh, honey, I'm sorry. Did I wake you? It was nearly midnight. Sarah should have been asleep, but she'd heard her mother's quiet sobs through the thin walls. Mom, I can get a job too. Lots of places hire 15-year-olds. Absolutely not. Your job is school. My job is helping my family, Sarah interrupted, crossing to sit beside her mother. And like it or not, there's going to be 3 of us soon. Claire's hand went to her stomach again. It had become an unconscious gesture over the past week. Sarah, you're just a child. You shouldn't have to. I'm not just a child. I haven't been just a child since Dad left. The words came out sharper than Sarah intended, and she saw her mother flinch. Sorry. I just mean, let me help. Please. In the dim kitchen light, with bills scattered across the table like fallen leaves, Claire looked at her daughter, really looked at her. When had Sarah's face lost its baby roundness? When had her eyes grown so serious? Okay, Claire finally whispered, but we have to be careful. If anyone finds out about the baby before it's born, if they realize we don't have insurance or proper medical care, they might take me away, Sarah finished. She'd heard enough stories from kids at school about social services and foster care. I won't let that happen. We'll keep it secret. And so began their conspiracy of two, protecting a third life that grew steadily beneath Claire's heart. Sarah got a job at Rosie's Diner, working the after-school shift from 4 to 8. Her first paycheck went entirely to prenatal vitamins and folic acid supplements she'd researched online. The second went into a secret fund for baby supplies, diapers, wipes, the absolute essentials they'd need. May turned to June, and Claire's morning sickness made working 2 jobs nearly impossible. Sarah would wake early to hold her mother's hair back, then make sure she ate at least a few crackers before heading to the school maintenance job. Between shifts at the diner, Sarah spent hours in the public library, reading everything she could find about pregnancy and childbirth. She printed articles about home births, studied diagrams until they were burned into her memory, and bookmarked every medical website she could find on her phone. One sweltering July evening, as they sat in their unair-conditioned apartment eating mac and cheese, the only thing Claire could keep down that week, Sarah noticed her mother wincing as she shifted in her chair. "You're back again?" Claire tried to smile. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Just tired." But Sarah was already moving behind her mother's chair, remembering the massage techniques she'd learned from a YouTube video. As her fingers worked the knots in her mother's shoulders, Claire let out a small sob. "Mom? Did I hurt you?" "No, baby. It's just..." Claire reached up to catch Sarah's hand. "I'm supposed to be taking care of you, not the other way around." Sarah leaned down to hug her mother from behind, careful of the small bump that was now visible. "Maybe we're supposed to take care of each other." August brought heat waves and more complications. Claire's ankles swelled so badly she could barely make it through her shifts at the school. The maintenance job didn't offer sick days, so she worked through the pain, coming home each night to soak her feet in cold water while Sarah read pregnancy books aloud. "Listen to this," Sarah said one evening, cross-legged on the bathroom floor while her mother soaked her feet. "The second trimester is often called the honeymoon period of pregnancy." "Some honeymoon? Huh?" Claire laughed, then winced as the baby kicked. "Your brother or sister is quite the dancer." "Brother," Sarah said confidently. "Definitely a brother. I can tell." "Oh, you can you?" Claire splashed a bit of water at her daughter. "And how exactly did you become such an expert?" Sarah dodged the water, grinning. "Just a feeling. Plus, boys are more trouble, and this one's already causing plenty." Their laughter echoed off the bathroom tiles, and for a moment, everything felt normal, just a mother and daughter sharing a joke. But then Claire's hand went to her side, her face tightening with pain, and reality crashed back in. "Mom!" Sarah was on her feet instantly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just..." Claire took a deep breath. "Just a strong kick. Really strong." Sarah helped her mother out of the bathroom and into bed, trying to ignore the worry gnawing at her stomach. That night, she stayed up late researching pregnancy complications, making lists of warning signs to watch for, and wondering, not for the first time, if they were in way over their heads. September brought cooler weather and new challenges. Claire's pregnancy was becoming impossible to hide. She wore loose clothing and avoided eye contact with customers at the diner, but questions were inevitable. Sarah learned to run interference, to deflect curious looks with teenage chatter and strategic positioning behind the counter. One afternoon, Mrs. Henderson, a regular customer known for her gossip, cornered Claire by the coffee maker. "Claire Mitchell, are you expecting?" Sarah, wiping down nearby tables, felt her heart stop. But her mother, who had always taught her that the best lies contain a grain of truth, simply laughed. "Oh, Mrs. Henderson, at my age, I've just been stress eating since David left. You know how it goes. The old woman clucked sympathetically. Men. Who needs them? Although, she leaned in conspiratorially. A little bird told me David's back in town. Saw him at the Stop and Shop just yesterday. Sarah dropped her cleaning rag. Claire's hand trembled as she poured coffee, but her voice remained steady. Is that so? Well, good for him. Sarah, honey, table 6 needs their check. That night, after her shift, Sarah found her mother sitting in the dark living room, one hand on her swollen belly, the other holding an old photograph. In the dim light from the street lamp outside, Sarah could make out her parents' smiling faces, their wedding day, before everything fell apart. Mom, Sarah sat beside her on the couch. You're not thinking of telling him, are you? Claire set the photo down with deliberate care. No. He lost the right to know when he walked out on us. She turned to Sarah, her eyes fierce in the darkness. But baby, if anything happens to me, don't. Sarah's voice cracked. Don't even say that. We have to be practical, Sarah. If anything happens, you need to know. Your father lives with his new family in Dorchester. His mother, your grandmother, is still in her old house on Maple Street. If you ever need help, nothing's going to happen to you, Sarah insisted, but she memorized the information anyway, filing it away with all the other emergency procedures she'd learned, just in case. October brought early frosts and more close calls. At school, Sarah's grades began to slip as exhaustion took its toll. Her English teacher, Mrs. Walsh, kept her after class one day. Sarah, is everything all right at home? You seem distracted lately. For a moment, Sarah was tempted to tell her everything about the baby, about their lack of insurance, about her terror every time her mother winced or grabbed her side. Mrs. Walsh had always been kind, had even given Sarah extra credit assignments when she missed homework due to work. But then she remembered her mother's fears about social services, about being separated, about the baby being taken away. So she forced a smile and blamed her tiredness on college application stress. That evening, helping her mother fold tiny onesies they'd bought at the Goodwill, Sarah asked, Mom, do you ever regret it? Keeping the baby? Claire's hands stilled on a small yellow sleeper. No, never. But I regret putting so much on your shoulders. You shouldn't have to carry all this. I want to, Sarah said fiercely. We're family, the three of us. November arrived with the first snow and mounting fears. Claire's blood pressure was rising. Sarah could tell from the headaches and dizziness her mother tried to hide. They'd bought a blood pressure cuff from the pharmacy, and Sarah checked it religiously, comparing the numbers to the charts she'd memorized. Maybe we should tell someone, Sarah suggested one night, after her mother nearly fainted at work. Just in case. But Claire was adamant. We've come this far. Just a few more weeks. Women have been giving birth at home for thousands of years. Yeah, and they died doing it for thousands of years too, Sarah muttered, but not loud enough for her mother to hear. The first week of December brought a heavy snowstorm and the beginning of the end. Claire's hands and face were swelling badly, and she could barely make it through her shifts. Sarah started sleeping on the floor beside her mother's bed, too afraid to be in her own room in case something happened during the night. On December 10th, Sarah came home from her shift at the diner to find her mother crying in the bathroom. Mom? What's wrong? I think it's starting, Claire whispered, but it's too early, and something feels wrong. Sarah's heart began to race, but her voice remained calm, the voice of the capable young woman she'd been forced to become. Okay, we can handle this. Let me check your blood pressure. But they couldn't handle it. Not really. Not when the contractions came too fast and too hard. Not when the blood started. Not when Claire's eyes began to glaze over, her grip on Sarah's hand weakening. Promise me, Claire gasped. After the baby, a boy, just as Sarah had predicted, had emerged into his sister's trembling hands. Promise you'll keep him safe. I promise, Sarah sobbed, trying to focus on clearing the baby's airways like she'd learned, trying not to see how pale her mother had become. I promise, Mom. Just please don't leave us. But some promises can't be kept, no matter how desperately we wish they could. And some must be kept, no matter the cost. 3 hours later, Sarah Mitchell would walk through the doors of Boston General's emergency room, carrying her newborn brother and the weight of that final promise. But in that moment, kneeling on the bathroom floor beside her mother's body, watching her brother take his first breaths as their mother took her last, Sarah understood something about love and sacrifice that most people take a lifetime to learn. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply keep going, one step at a time, carrying our promises through the storm. The social worker arrived at Boston General just before dawn. Sarah watched her approach through the nursery window, where she'd been standing vigil over her brother for the past 4 hours. The woman's sensible shoes squeaked against the freshly waxed floor, a sound that would forever remind Sarah of this moment, this threshold between her old life and whatever came next. "Sarah?" Dr. Chen's voice was gentle behind her. He'd stayed well past the end of his shift, something about paperwork he needed to finish, but Sarah suspected it had more to do with the way his eyes lingered on her brother's tiny form. "This is Ms. Talia Rodriguez from Child Protective Services. She's here to help." Sarah didn't turn away from the window. In the nursery, a nurse was changing her brother's tiny diaper with practiced efficiency. He looked impossibly small under the warming lights, but his color was good now, and his cries were strong. "Look, Mom," she thought, "I did what you asked. He's safe." "Sarah?" Ms. Rodriguez's voice was warm, with a slight accent that reminded Sarah of her favorite teacher from elementary school. "Would you like to sit down? We have some things we need to discuss." Finally, Sarah turned. The social worker was younger than she'd expected, maybe in her early 30s, with kind eyes and worry lines around her mouth. She wore a deep purple scarf that seemed too cheerful for the circumstances. "Is this the part where you tell me you're taking him away?" Sarah's voice was raw from crying, but her chin lifted in defiance. "Because I won't let that happen. I promised my mom." "This is the part," Ms. Rodriguez interrupted gently, "where we figure out how to keep you both safe and together." Something in Sarah's chest cracked at those words. She'd been holding herself together with iron will and desperation since her mother's last breath. But now, Dr. Chun caught her before her knees gave out completely. Somehow they made it to the small consultation room adjacent to the nursery, where Linda had thoughtfully left a tray with tea and sandwiches hours ago. Sarah couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. "The police have been to your apartment," Ms. Rodriguez said once Sarah was seated, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea she couldn't bring herself to drink. "They've arranged for your mother's body to be taken to the funeral home." "I'm so sorry for your loss, Sarah." The words seemed to come from very far away. In Sarah's mind, she was back in that bathroom, watching her mother's face grow slack, feeling the moment life slipped away while new life wailed in her arms. The impossible choice that followed: stay with her mother's body or save her brother's life. "The police also found this," Ms. Rodriguez continued, pulling out a sealed envelope from her briefcase. "It was in your mother's bedside table." Sarah's hands shook as she took the envelope. Her mother's handwriting, usually so neat and precise, was shaky on the front. "For Sarah and the baby, if anything happens." "Would you like some privacy to read it?" Dr. Chun asked. Sarah shook her head. She needed witnesses for this. Needed to know she wasn't alone with whatever words her mother had left them. With trembling fingers, she broke the seal. "My dearest Sarah and my precious baby, if you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true, and I've left you both far too soon. Sarah, my brave, beautiful girl, I know you're probably angry with me right now. You warned me about the risks, begged me to seek help. I was stubborn and proud and terrified of losing you both to the system. But I need you to know something. The past 8 months, watching you step up to protect this baby, seeing you become this amazing young woman, they've been some of the proudest months of my life. You've shown me what real strength looks like, what real love can do. In the bottom drawer of my dresser, you'll find an insurance policy. I took it out years ago after your father left. It's not much, but it should help with immediate expenses. There's also a letter for your grandmother Mitchell. I know we haven't spoken to that side of the family since your father left, but she's a good woman, Sarah. She never approved of how David treated us. Most importantly, there's a letter for Dr. Rebecca Chun at Boston General's fertility clinic. You don't know this, but she was my friend in college. We lost touch over the years, but I've been following her career. She and her husband, who I believe is an ER doctor at the same hospital, have been trying to have a child for years. Sarah's head snapped up to look at Dr. Chun, whose face had gone pale. Rebecca, he whispered. Your mother knew Rebecca? Sarah's hands were shaking so badly now that Ms. Rodriguez gently took the letter to continue reading. I know this is a lot to process, but I've watched you checking the baby books out of the library. Sarah, I've seen you researching local hospitals. You've probably read about Dr. Rebecca Chen's work with high-risk pregnancies. What you don't know is that she and James have been trying to foster or adopt for years. If something happens to me, take the baby to Boston General. Find the Chens. They're good people, Sarah. The kind of people who could give you both a home if you let them. The kind of people who understand that family isn't just about blood. I know it's a lot to ask trusting strangers, but you're so young, my darling girl. You shouldn't have to choose between raising your brother and having a life of your own. You deserve a chance to be a teenager, to go to college, to follow your dreams. And your brother deserves two parents who can give him everything he needs. Whatever you decide, know that I love you both more than my own life. I'm so sorry I won't get to see you grow up, won't get to know what amazing people you'll become. But I died bringing new life into this world. And if that life is half as extraordinary as his big sister, then it was worth every moment. All my love. Mom. The silence that followed was broken only by the muffled sounds of hospital activity outside the door and Sarah's quiet sobs. Dr. Chun had sunk into a chair, his own eyes wet. I need to call Rebecca, he said softly. We've been trying for so long. We just got approved as foster parents last month. Ms. Rodriguez nodded. That would actually simplify things considerably, especially given your mother's letter. Emergency foster placement with a licensed family member or family friend is often the best solution in cases like this. She turned to Sarah. But only if that's what you want. You have a voice in this, Sarah. Sarah stared at the letter in Ms. Rodriguez's hands, her mother's last gift to them. Not just the words, but a path forward, a way to keep her promise while not sacrificing her own future. She thought about Dr. Chen's kindness when she'd first arrived, about how he'd stayed long past his shift to make sure they were okay. Could? Her voice cracked. She swallowed and tried again. Could I still see him? Still be part of his life? Oh, sweetheart. Dr. Chen's voice was thick with emotion. You would be part of our family. Both of you. Rebecca and I have a 4-bedroom house in Newton. One room's already set up as a nursery, and another could be yours if you want it. We could give you both a home, an education, a future. Your mother was right, family isn't just about blood. Through the window, Sarah could see her brother stretching in his hospital bassinet, his tiny fists waving at the world he'd just entered. A world that, thanks to their mother's final act of love, might hold more possibility than pain. I'd like to meet Dr. Rebecca first, Sarah said finally. And I need to help plan Mom's funeral. I need to. We'll help with all of that, Ms. Rodriguez assured her. One step at a time, Dr. Chun was already pulling out his phone, his hands shaking slightly as he dialed. Rebecca? Love, I need you to come to the hospital. There's someone you need to meet. 2 someones, actually. And bring that box of baby clothes we've been saving. I think we're finally going to need them. Sarah turned back to the window, watching her brother sleep peacefully in his bassinet. For the first time since her mother's death, she felt something unfurl in her chest. Not hope. Exactly, not yet. But possibility. A future she couldn't quite see but could almost imagine. What's his name? Ms. Rodriguez asked softly. Your brother. Sarah thought about it for a moment, then smiled through her tears. Clay, she said. After Mom, Claire. His name is Clay. Outside, the sun was rising over Boston, painting the snow-covered city in shades of pink and gold. A new day was beginning, and with it, the next chapter of their story. Not the one Sarah would have chosen, but perhaps the one they needed. She pressed her hand against the nursery window, watching Clay's chest rise and fall with each tiny breath. I kept my promise, Mom, she whispered, and I always will. Dr. Rebecca Chun stood in the doorway of the hospital room, her heart thundering in her chest. Through the glass of the nursery window, she could see her husband James gently lifting a newborn from a bassinet movements she'd watched him perform countless times over 15 years of marriage, but never with their own child. Until now, when James had called an hour ago, his voice trembling with emotion, she'd thought she was dreaming. After 7 failed IVF attempts, after 3 miscarriages, after years of adoption applications and fostering courses, could it really be this simple? This complicated? This miraculous? Her eyes fell on the teenage girl sitting by the window. Sarah Mitchell looked both younger and older than her 15 years, exhausted, grief-stricken, but with a steely determination in her posture that reminded Rebecca painfully of Claire. Dear God, Claire. How had she not known her old college roommate was in such desperate straits? Sarah? Rebecca's voice was barely above a whisper, but the girl turned, and for a moment, Rebecca was transported back 25 years to a dormitory room at Boston University, looking into eyes so similar to Claire's it made her chest ache. I'm Rebecca. I knew your mother. Sarah studied her carefully, taking in everything from Rebecca's hastily thrown-on clothes to the bag of baby items clutched in her arms. She wrote about you in her letter, said you were kind, said you'd understand about family being more than blood. Rebecca took a tentative step into the room, setting the bag down. Your mother was my roommate freshman year of college. She was the one who convinced me to switch my major to medicine when I was having doubts. Rebecca's voice caught. She used to say that healing people was like solving puzzles with your heart instead of your head. Something flickered in Sarah's expression, recognition, perhaps, of her mother's way of speaking. She never told me about you. We lost touch after graduation. Different hospitals, different cities. Life has a way of... Rebecca gestured helplessly, tears threatening. I should have tried harder to stay in contact. If I'd known. Mom was good at keeping secrets, Sarah said quietly. She thought she was protecting us. James appeared in the doorway then, cradling Clay carefully in his arms. Someone wanted to meet his Aunt Rebecca, he said softly, and Rebecca's hands flew to her mouth at the word, Aunt. At the future it implied, at the family taking shape in this room. She approached slowly, reverently, as James placed the newborn in her arms. Clay squirmed slightly, then settled, his tiny fingers wrapping around her thumb. Oh, she breathed, and in that single syllable was 20 years of longing, of empty nurseries and shattered hopes, of love finally finding its home. His name is Clay, Sarah offered. After Mom, after Claire. Rebecca looked up, tears flowing freely now. It's perfect. She would have loved it. She hesitated, then added, Would you like to hold him? Sarah nodded, and Rebecca carefully transferred the baby to his sister's arms. The moment felt sacred somehow, a passing of trust, a beginning. There's something else you should know, James said, moving to stand beside his wife. Your mother's letter. It mentioned our house in Newton. But what she couldn't have known is that we just finished converting the garage into a separate apartment. It has its own entrance, kitchen, everything. We were planning to rent it out, but... He looked at Sarah meaningfully. It could be yours if you want. Close enough to be family, but with space to be yourself. Sarah's head snapped up. You mean, not just a bedroom? Rebecca nodded. You're not a child, Sarah. These past months have proven that. You deserve independence, privacy, but you also deserve support, family, people to lean on. We could try to be that. For both of you. Sarah looked down at Clay, sleeping peacefully in her arms. Would I still be his sister? Oh, sweetheart. Rebecca moved to sit beside her. You'll always be his sister. That's not even a question. We're not trying to replace your mother or change who you are to each other. We're just offering to help, to be additional parents, not replacement ones. The next few hours passed in a blur of paperwork and planning. Ms. Rodriguez, the social worker, helped expedite emergency foster placement forms. Rebecca made calls to her contacts at the fertility clinic, arranging for priority processing of their fostering application. James spoke with the funeral home, insisting on handling all expenses. By late afternoon, exhaustion had caught up with Sarah. She dozed in a recliner while Rebecca sat nearby, feeding Clay with practiced ease despite her trembling hands. "She looks so much like Claire," Rebecca whispered to her husband. "Do you remember that photo I showed you? From our college graduation?" James nodded, watching Sarah sleep. "I've been thinking, the apartment over the garage, it needs some work. Paint, furniture. Maybe we could let Sarah help design it? Give her something to focus on besides planning her mother's funeral?" Rebecca finished softly. "That's a good idea. She needs a project, something to look forward to." Sarah stirred then, blinking awake. For a moment, confusion clouded her features. Then reality crashed back in. But before grief could overwhelm her again, Clay let out a tiny sneeze, and Sarah smiled a real smile, small but genuine. "He does that just like Mom did," she said. 3 times in a row, always. Rebecca seized the moment. "Tell me about her? About both of you? I've missed so much." And so, as afternoon faded into evening, Sarah began to talk. She told them about her mother's awful cooking but amazing baking, about weekend movie marathons and inside jokes. She told them about the pregnancy, about their secret packs and preparations, about her job at the diner and the books she'd studied. "She was so brave," Sarah said finally, her voice thick with tears. "Even at the end, she was thinking about us, making plans, writing that letter. Just like her daughter," James said quietly. Sarah looked up at him, surprised, then slowly nodded. I want to go back to school eventually. Mom would have wanted that. But I need to be near Clay. Need to know he's okay." "Newton North High is 3 blocks from our house," Rebecca offered. "And I'm taking a 6-month maternity leave. We could work out a schedule, make sure someone's always with him. Make sure you have time to study, to see friends, to just be 15. "I don't know how to do that anymore," Sarah admitted. "Be 15. Then we'll figure it out together," Rebecca promised. One day at a time. Later that night, as Sarah finally slept in a proper hospital bed they'd arranged for her, Rebecca and James stood in the nursery, watching Clay sleep. "Are we crazy?" Rebecca whispered. "Taking on 2 kids, just like that?" James wrapped his arms around his wife. "Maybe, but sometimes the craziest decisions are the most right. Claire knew us well enough to trust us with her children. We can't let her down." "We won't," Rebecca said firmly. "Whatever it takes, we'll make this work." Through the window, they could see snow beginning to fall again, covering the city in a fresh blanket of white. Clean slate, Rebecca thought. A new beginning. In her hand, she clutched Claire's letter, not the one she'd written to Sarah, but the one addressed specifically to Rebecca, which Ms. Rodriguez had delivered earlier. She hadn't opened it yet, wasn't sure she was ready for Claire's voice to reach out across the years and the divide between life and death. But tomorrow she would read it. Tomorrow, they would begin planning the funeral, helping Sarah say goodbye to her mother while holding on to the memories that mattered most. Tomorrow, they would start the process of becoming a family, not replacing what was lost, but building something new from the foundations of love and promise that Claire had left them. For now, though, Rebecca simply watched her husband stroke Clay's tiny hand through the bassinet's clear wall, watched Sarah sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, and whispered a promise of her own to the friend she'd lost and found too late. "We'll love them, Claire. We'll love them enough for both of us." 1 year later, snow dusted the graves at Mount Auburn Cemetery, turning the solemn stone markers into softly rounded sculptures. Sarah Mitchell stood before her mother's headstone, adjusting Clay's winter hat as he squirmed in her arms. At 12 months old, he was a sturdy, active boy with their mother's dark eyes and infectious laugh. The same laugh that used to echo through their small apartment during weekend movie marathons. "Life's too short not to laugh, baby," her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Even when things are hard. Especially when things are hard. Hold still, little man," she murmured, smiling as he reached for the falling snowflakes. "There's someone I want you to meet." The words transported her back to another winter day, 15 years ago, when Claire had held her hand at this same cemetery. introducing her to the grandmother Sarah had never known. "We keep them alive in our hearts," Claire had said then. "That's how love survives." Behind them, Rebecca and James Chun waited respectfully at a distance, giving the siblings this moment alone. Sarah caught Rebecca wiping away tears, and her heart swelled with affection for this woman who had become so much more than just her guardian. Last week, Rebecca had sat with her for hours, helping her perfect her BU scholarship application essay, just as Claire had once helped Rebecca study for her medical school entrance exams. The granite headstone before them was simple but elegant. Claire Elizabeth Mitchell, beloved mother, daughter, friend, love finds a way. Sarah knelt in the snow, settling Clay on her lap. She pulled out a worn envelope from her coat pocket, her mother's final letter, which she'd read so many times the creases were soft as fabric. One passage in particular had become her touchstone. "My dearest Sarah, remember that night when you were 7 and you were so scared of the thunderstorm? I told you that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing what needs to be done anyway. You've shown me that kind of courage every day since you found out about the baby. Now I need you to be brave one more time. Brave enough to let yourself be happy, to let yourself be loved, to let yourself become whoever you're meant to be. Your strength isn't just in what you can carry alone. It's in knowing when to let others help you carry it." "Hey, Mom." Sarah's voice was steady, though her eyes glistened. "Sorry we missed last week's visit. Clay had that ear infection. You should have seen him, though. Just like you when you had a cold. Absolutely refusing to rest, wanting to be part of everything." Rebecca said she's never seen such a determined baby. She set Clay down on his feet, supporting him under his arms. With determination that reminded her achingly of their mother, Clay took 3 wobbly steps before plopping down in the snow. "Did you see that, Mom? He's walking. Well, mostly falling, but with style." Sarah laughed, remembering her own first steps, documented in a photo album Rebecca had found in Claire's belongings. "He's just like you, stubborn, brave, doesn't know when to quit." Looking at Clay now, Sarah felt the familiar mix of joy and ache that his milestones always brought. Each new achievement was a celebration tinged with the knowledge that Claire would never see them. But increasingly, the joy was winning out over the sadness. "You were right about the Chens, Mom," Sarah continued, bouncing Clay gently as he played with her scarf. "Rebecca found your college yearbook last month. Those pictures of you too. I couldn't stop staring at them. You were wearing that horrible 90s flannel shirt you used to keep in the back of your closet." The memory sparked another. Sarah at 12, playing dress-up in that same shirt, Claire laughing and taking pictures, saying, "Some fashion choices should stay in college, baby, but the friendships? Those should last forever." "I got into BU, Mom," Sarah said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "Full scholarship, early decision. I'm going to study psychology with a focus on child development. Remember how you always said I had a way with the neighbor kids? Turns out all those babysitting jobs were preparing me for something bigger." She glanced back at Rebecca and James, who were now building a tiny snowman to entertain Clay. "The Chens are helping me set up a college fund for Clay too. Rebecca says it's what you would have wanted. She told me about how you used to tutor other students for free because you believed everyone deserved a chance to learn." Clay reached toward the headstone, his tiny mittened hand touching the cold granite. "That's Grandma," Sarah told him softly. "She gave us everything, including the courage to let love find new ways to reach us." Rebecca approached then, her boots crunching in the snow. She held out a small, worn book to Sarah. "I found this in my old college things last night. I thought you might want to have it." It was a small photo album, and on the first page was a picture Sarah had never seen before. Claire and Rebecca, both young and laughing, arms around each other in their graduation gowns. On the back, in her mother's handwriting, "Some friendships are forever, even when life takes us different ways. Love always finds its way back." "She used to say that all the time," Rebecca said softly, sitting beside Sarah in the snow. "When things got hard in med school, when relationships failed, when dreams seemed impossible, love finds a way. It became our motto." "That's why you put it on her headstone," Sarah realized. Rebecca nodded, tears falling freely now. When I read her letter, when I saw you and Clay that first night in the hospital, I knew she had found a way to bring us all together again. She was always the smartest one of us all. James joined them then, Clay secure in his arms. We have something to tell you, Sarah. The adoption paperwork came through yesterday. For both of you, Sarah's heart swelled with a complex mixture of emotions: grief, gratitude, love, hope. She thought about the past year. Midnight feedings shared with Rebecca, James teaching her to drive, family dinners where stories of Claire were shared and celebrated. She thought about her plans for college, about the children she hoped to help someday, about the legacy of love and courage her mother had left them. Mom wrote that family isn't just about blood, Sarah said finally, standing and brushing snow from her jeans. She knew we'd need more than memories to build a life on. She chose you both for us. She swallowed hard, then smiled through her tears. So yes to making it official. Rebecca pulled her into a fierce hug, and then James was there too, careful not to squish Clay between them. Your mother was the bravest person I've ever known, Rebecca whispered, until I met her daughter. Later, after the others had headed back to the car, Sarah lingered for one final moment. She pulled out her acceptance letter from BU, placing it against the headstone like a gift. I'm going to be okay, Mom, she whispered. We both are. You taught me how to be strong, how to love without limits, and how to let myself be loved in return. I'm going to help other kids find their way through hard times, just like you always helped everyone around you. And Clay will grow up knowing he has 3 parents who loved him more than life itself. From the parking lot came the sound of Clay's delighted laugh. He'd probably spotted a squirrel again. Sarah smiled, touching the cold stone one last time. Rebecca told me something last night that made me think of you. She said that some people are like stars, even after they're gone. Their light keeps guiding us home. You're our star, Mom. Always have been, always will be. As she walked back to the car, snow crunching under her boots, Sarah felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the weather. Ahead, Rebecca was holding the car door open, steam rising from a thermos of hot chocolate. James was singing something silly to make Clay giggle. And somewhere, Sarah was certain, Claire was watching, smiling, knowing her final gift to her children had been not just life, but the chance to live it surrounded by love. The letter in Sarah's pocket crinkled as she walked, its final words etched in her heart. My darling children, remember that love is not a finite resource that gets smaller when it's shared. It multiplies, grows, finds new channels to flow through. I may not be there to see you grow, but I've made sure you'll never grow alone. Be brave, be kind, be open to joy, and know that wherever you go, whatever you become, my love goes with you. Forever and always. Mom Sarah turned back one last time, watching snowflakes settle on her mother's headstone like tiny stars. The inscription caught the weak winter sunlight. Love finds a way. It always would.